So you're thinking about getting a new dog, a companion for your dog. You have done your homework. You listened to last week's podcast episode. You figured out your why you want the dog. You figured out what kind of dog, what stage of life. You've done the exercise where you closed your eyes and you pictured your life with your dogs. You figured out your expectations. You are ready to finally meet your potential new dog. That's what we're talking about today. How to actually introduce your dog to the new dog. All the things you need to know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, coming up in this week's episode. Let's get into it. Are you worried that your fearful dog may hurt someone or something else? Do you have to prepare just to take a walk around the block? Hi, I'm Tracy, and I too had that dog. The one that you could only walk at nighttime when no one else was around. And I felt ashamed, and oh gosh, I wish that people could just see the dog that I know and love. I wanted the confidence to be able to walk my dog and not have to worry about who or what was around the corner. And I kept telling myself that if I just keep doing obedience drills and distracting with treats, that things would get better. Until I found the secret. Fear is not something that you can train out of a dog. In this podcast, you will find tips to help build your dog's confidence naturally, communication and understanding to foster that trust, and how to address those fear-based behaviors effectively so that you can enjoy a stress-free life with your dog. So if you're ready, stop chopping those chicken wieners, grab your notebook, and let's get to it. Hello, and welcome to Beyond Obedience. I am your host, Tracy. This is part 2 of our series, our 3-part series on how to introduce a new dog to your family, to your pack, all the things. This is part 2, so we're actually going to get into the actual introduction today. But before we do, I need to give another thank you, another shout out to Karen, who wrote in and asked this question. She wanted to know what she can do for introducing a new puppy to her dog. And that's what inspired all of this. So I want to remind you that if we are not already pen pals, if you are not on my mailing list, you need to be on that mailing list. Why are you not on that mailing list? I know I keep saying it. I'm going to say it again, but you and I can become pen pals. It's the best way to stay connected. It's the best way for you to get your questions into me. If you have questions you want me to answer, either here on the podcast, sometimes I'll answer them on Question of the Week. It depends. You might even be interviewed or featured here on this podcast in a future episode. Who knows? So many possibilities, but you won't ever get there if you don't sign up for those Canine Chronicles. Here's how you do it. You're going to go to beyondobedience.ca. You're going to hang on my website for a second. Make sure you see my face. Make sure it's my website. Make sure you see my face. Right? Hang on the website page for a few seconds, and another little pop-up menu is going to come up, and it's going to say, do you want to be a part of the Canine Chronicles? You just give me your name, you give me your email address, and that's it. Now we're pen pals. Now all you have to do to reach out to me is just simply reply to those emails that I send out every single week. That's how easy it is. That's what Karen did. That's what got us to here. So if you missed last week we talked about before you get a new dog, before you get a new puppy, before you decide to bring another dog into your home. If you have a dog currently that is living with you, that is your best friend, your furry companion, if that dog is your everything, I want you to take that step very, very seriously. Before you get the dog, because there's a lot of questions I want you to answer before you even bring home another dog. We have some things we need to talk about. And if you missed that, that's the episode before this one. Go check that out. But today, now I'm assuming you've done that. I'm assuming you've done your homework. You figured out the why. And now we're into the actual introductions. And introductions are important. You only get one chance to make a first impression. Am I right? Am I right? Of course. So it isn't just as simple as you go and decide, you go look at the dog, you bring the dog home, and you just say, here, everything that is ours is yours now, puppy, or everything that is ours is yours now, dog. That's not how you want to do it. Okay? There's a lot of things to consider. We need to consider the feelings and the emotions of your current dog. So, the best place, the best thing that you can do, and I'm hoping many shelters, many rescues will allow you to do this. But the best place to do this is to actually see if you can meet this dog or puppy outside of your home, not in your home. Go to the shelter and have the dogs meet outside before you decide, okay? I would assume if it's a good shelter, if it's a good rescue, they're obviously going to be invested in the success of this adoption, and they are going to be all for making sure that you and your dog get to meet this dog, maybe even a couple of times. Maybe set up a few times where you can go and take a walk with this brand new dog. Okay? If you are in a situation where that's not an option, I would say that might be a red flag for me. That might be a red flag for me. Okay? So it's very important. And I know as someone who's been in the industry for a while and as someone who has had my fair share of run-ins with rescues and shelters, I understand their motivation. Don't get me wrong. Shelters, rescues are overburdened, they're overrun, they are tired, and they really are trying to do the very best that they can. But you don't want to rush this. Nobody wants to rush this, okay? So if it's possible, you're going to see if you can meet the new dog outside of your home, meet them at the shelter, meet them at a neutral territory would be best. And excuse me, to be honest with you, I would actually go as far as to say, if you're meeting like someone in the rescue, if you could meet in an absolutely neutral place, someplace away from where the new dog stays, because shelter systems and rescues can be a lot of excitement, a lot of smells, a lot of other things going on there. And we want to make sure we're getting a clear picture of how the dogs feel about one another. So you're going to make time to meet the new dog in a neutral territory. Now, the very first thing that I want you to do is I want you to take the dogs for a walk. So you're going to ask the handler of the dog that you are considering adopting to go for a walk with you. And here's how you're going to do it. Right? You're going to make sure that the expectations of this walk are simply this. We are just going to go on a ritual of migration together. This isn't about meeting. The last thing that you want to do is get two dogs out of a car that don't know what's going on. It's all exciting. They're in a brand new place. There's also a new dog there. And we're going to let the dogs run up to one another on leash. Terrible idea. Nose to nose, just in your face, let's meet. That's what I don't want you to do. That's what not to do. Okay? Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to ask the... It depends on the dog. If you've had a chance to meet the dog prior to your dog meeting the dog and you get a feel for how this dog is, if this is a shy, nervous dog and your dog is a confident dog, then I would do it this way. Okay, what I would say is I would have you and your dog start walking and the new dog and the handler walk just slightly behind you. Okay? Just so that this new dog has an opportunity to get a smell of your dog, right? Just to get a smell of you and a smell of this new dog. That's what I would do if it's sort of an unconfident dog. Now, if it's the other way around, and let's say you have kind of a shyer dog, a little bit more reserved dog, and this new dog is maybe a little bit more energetic, a little bit more high-strung, I would do it the opposite way. I would actually have the handler of the new dog come out of the car, start to walk, and I would give your dog an opportunity to kind of get some sniffs in there. The idea here is to make sure that the handler and the new dog just keep walking forward. And that's hard. I'm not saying that's not hard. Obviously, the dog's going to be turning, going, who's behind me? What's going on? The idea here is to just sort of encourage the handler to encourage that dog to just keep moving. Let's just keep going forward. And it's giving your dog the space and the time to get some intel without the pressure of the direct nose-to-nose contact. Just being behind them. They don't have to be right up there, right? Dogs may like to do that, get right up and sniff the butt there, but they don't have to be right up there. They'll get a lot of information just being behind, downwind, right? So we want to give them that time just to get a little bit of intel. And this is where I want you to be extremely aware of how your dog is reacting. I want you to be a keen observer of your dog's behavior, okay? And if possible, ask the handler of the other dog to be an observer of that dog's behavior. And here's some things that you're going to be looking for. Is my dog interested in this dog? That's a very basic, simple question, but is my dog interested in this dog? Is my dog kind of, air scenting a little bit, sniffing a little bit, seemingly curious about this dog? Or is my dog kind of hanging back like, I don't know who that guy is, but I don't want anything to do with him, right? Is my dog maybe being a little indifferent to the dog? Maybe my dog is now kind of uncomfortably sniffing the ground or looking away or doing some behaviors where you're like, they're not even really paying attention. That's actually a sign. That's a signal, right? You want to be observing, carefully observing. And the whole time that you're doing this, and hey, for all of you that have been following me for a while, this next phrase isn't going to be new. And say it out loud if you're listening to this. You're going to say the phrase, how interesting. How interesting. I want you to be saying that a lot during this introduction because I want you to be observing. And when we say how interesting, it makes your mind inquisitive. How interesting. I wonder why my dog's acting like that. How interesting. I wonder why the other dog is not paying attention to my dog. How interesting. I wonder why. I want you to be in a how interesting frame of mind because that's going to set your mind up to observe and categorize some of your observations. Because quite often, we go into these introductions all emotion-filled. We go into these introductions like, oh my gosh, look at how cute they are. And we'll see what we want to see. We'll see only the things that we want to see. We'll go, oh my gosh, did you see that? He wagged his tail. He looks really happy to see my dog. We may miss how my dog felt about that. We may miss some of these subtleties. So I want you to be a keen observer of all of these introductions. And I'm going to go through this point by point because I really want you to take into consideration all the little micro behaviors that your dog is going to give you. I want you to start to be an expert on your dog and your dog's behavior because you're going to need these skill sets moving forward in the next days, weeks, months, and nay, I say even years. And we're going to talk about that next week. Okay? You're going to need these keen skills. So I want you to take a look at everything. How interesting. Did my dog pull forward? Did my dog pull back? Did my dog... Here's some great tips for before you're even walking side by side when you've got, the handler and the other dog either in front of you or slightly behind you. I want you to give your dog some options on that leash. Not to go see the dog, okay? If you've got a dog that is just immediately going up and saying hello to everybody and your dog's a happy-go-lucky, this doesn't apply to you. I'm talking about the dogs that may seem a little bit more reserved, where they're actually kind of going, I'm not sure if I know this guy or like this guy. What I want you to do, I want you to give the dog some choices in this moment. So make sure you have enough space away from the other dog that they can't actually meet. And I want you to see what your dog chooses to do in these moments. Because here's what I will tell you is when we do these introductions, when we have a leash on our dogs while doing these introductions, we're going to mess up the actual introduction. We're going to mess up the actual handshake, the beautiful dance that is the dog's way of saying hello and how they get information from one another. We mess that up by having a collar and a leash on them. We mess that up by tensing up and holding our breath and all the things that we do for these interactions. So what I want you to do in this moment, again, I'm going to reiterate this, you're going to have space. Okay, so make sure that there's space between you and this other dog. But if you have a dog that's kind of a little reserved and not immediately interested in going up to this dog, I want you to give them the space to make choices. So move over away from the dog. And as you're approaching the dog, give your dog the option to choose the side they walk on. Okay? This is one of the reasons why when I'm teaching my leash walking and leash communication, I talk a lot about this, about giving our dogs options to tell us how they feel. Because quite often we don't. We get stuck in our rules of obedience where we're like, dogs have to walk on this side and I have to dictate what side they walk on. And by doing those things, by limiting them in their expressions, we're missing the conversations that they may be having with us. Conversations like, I don't feel comfortable here. So one of the things that I want you to do is allow your dog to tell you how they feel. So as you're approaching from behind and you're moving over, I want you to give your dog the option to choose the side. And a lot of times when those dogs choose to go on the other side of you, I want you to say, how interesting. How interesting, right? So all of these little things, that these beginning moments, those first 20 seconds, 30 seconds, minute of this walk where you're going to be watching your dog and giving them some options, you're making sure you have space, you're seeing what your dog wants to do, are going to tell you a lot of information. And you want to make sure that you are being aware of that. Okay, so that's for the dogs that are tentative. So what you're going to do is, as your dog is telling you where they want to go, if they want to be on the other side of you and not be near this dog, you let that happen. And as you get closer and closer, you're going to see how your dog feels. Are they pulling towards? Are they pulling away? Are they moving towards? Or are they moving away? Are they crossing across you? Are they leaning against you? Are they looking up at you with that eye look like, I don't like this? These are all the things I want you to say. Now, listen, I want you to know while I'm saying these things, it doesn't mean that this isn't going to work out. Okay? So if you start to see this, I don't want your mind to start racing going, oh my gosh, he doesn't like this dog. I don't want you to do that. Don't do that. Just how interesting, how interesting, how interesting, how interesting. Because it doesn't mean that this isn't going to work out. It just means that we have a dog that's taking their time. They're taking their time, but they're also letting you know some stuff. And that's important. Okay? So now you get closer and closer, right? Until you're walking with the dog, right? Now, the way I like it to start for any introduction is I like it to start dog, person, person, dog. So each of the handlers have the dogs on the outside and the people are walking together. And if you can walk dog, person, person, dog, and everybody's relaxed, nobody's pulling anymore, everybody's just walking. Remember, you're walking. I want you to have in your head, we're walking. When we're walking, we're walking. That's what we do. We walk. Our point here is to walk. It's not about meeting. It's to let out some of that extra energy. It's to let the dogs get some information, chemical information and smell information and all of that stuff. And we're just going to keep walking. Okay? And once that starts to happen, then you can move one dog over. So it's going to be person, dog, person, dog. And you're going to see and you're going to observe as you move that person over, or as you move that dog over, and it's now a little bit closer to the new dog, how does that make them feel? Does it change anything with either dog? Does it make either dog uncomfortable? Does one dog get more excited? Does one dog kind of shy a little bit away? You're going to take all of that in. And then when that gets really comfortable, the dogs are a neutral body, which means neutral spine, neutral tail, neutral head. Okay? When that happens, the dogs are nice and relaxed. Then you're going to move away. Okay, this is a very important part. Move away so that there's space, but then you're going to move so that it's going to look like person, dog, dog, person with a gap in between. So the dogs still can't meet. They're still not going to meet. They're not going to touch each other. They're not going to be able to get each other. There's enough space there. But now they're side by side and there's no intervention or no in between with a human being. And you're going to see how they feel about that. And if that all goes well and everything's fine, then you're going to continue on to walk. You can try getting them a little bit closer, but please remember the idea of this walk is not to let them meet. So even if they start to get really close and then one turns and goes, hey, how are you? You're still going to keep talking. You're still going to keep talking. You're still going to keep walking. Okay? I don't let my dogs meet on leash. I do ritual of migration first. I make sure my dogs are really, really comfortable. I make sure I'm really comfortable. How do you feel? Check in with yourself. How do you feel? Are you feeling okay? Do you feel tense at all? Have you been holding your breath? Don't hold your breath. Make an exaggerated effort to breathe while you're doing this. Don't hold your breath. I want you to observe all of those things. Okay? Now, let's say you're like, I think these guys are pretty good. And you and the handler, and I'm assuming if the handler is a rescue or a shelter staff, they have a good handle on dog behavior. Then ideally, you're going to go and find an enclosed, safe area where you can maybe let these dogs meet. But let's say you're still slightly uncomfortable and you're like, I don't really know. If you're not really sure, then I would end that session right there and say, can we come back in a couple of days and see how this goes again? It's okay for you, even if you had plans today that you thought like these guys are going to meet and they're going to play and it's going to be joyful and it's all going to be lovely. If there's a part of you that's like, I don't know, my dog still seems a little tense or a little disinterested or a little bit aloof or whatever you're sensing, you're feeling, I want you to trust your gut and ask them, all right, I think that's good for today. I'd like to give my dog a break. I'd like to go home and let my dog decompress and let me know how he feels about that. And then I'd like to come back a different day. That's perfectly okay and highly, highly encouraged, I will say. Take some time, take some space. Let your dog go home and decompress. You know, in the days to come, when I get into the fearful dog stuff, we're going to talk a lot about this idea of, you know, comfort zone and having a comfort zone and allowing your dogs to decompress. And that's going to be important. So if that's the case, then do that. Come and meet the dog 2-3 times, right? Go for walks 2 or 3 times. See what happens. Okay, see how your dog feels. And be honest. That's my last sort of part about that. You have to be honest with yourself. Be honest. If you're not feeling it and the dog's not feeling it, you have to be honest. Okay? All right. So let's say, though, that you're like, these dogs are really digging it. I think they're really getting along. My dog seems excited. My other dog seems really cool. We're going to go let them meet. You're going to go to an enclosed area where we know that the dogs can kind of do this. And in my opinion, and again, always consult a professional, right? If you don't know, you don't know. In my opinion, I always let go of the leash. That's why I say a safe enclosed area. I always like to let go of the leash because, as I mentioned, we mess that up. We mess up the introductions. And if you've ever had a chance to watch dogs unencumbered by leashes and collars, how they do introductions, it is a dance. It's a beautiful dance of energy and smell and chemicals and movement. It's beautiful. If you put a human and a leash and a collar and attach that to the dog, it messes it all up. We change that dance. And honestly, I think in a lot of cases, bad introductions come because we messed that up and things were said that weren't supposed to be said. So it's important for me when I introduce dogs, if I'm feeling really comfortable, I let go of the leash. Now, quite often I'll leave the leash dangling in case that after that first while it goes terribly bad. I have a way to get the dog. But but over time, if I notice that it's going really well, then I'll stop the play and I'll take off the equipment because it's very dangerous to have dogs playing with equipment on. Okay. But to start the introduction period, I usually have it dangling. Like I usually keep the collar and the leash on so that I can step in if I need to. All right. Now, again, I'm going to preemptively say to cover all of my bases here, if this isn't your thing, make sure you have a professional there to help you. Okay. Someone with a keen eye that knows dog behavior that can help you. Okay. Now, what do we do once the dogs are playing? Well, that's a whole other thing in itself in these introductions. I'm going to actually start to observe what kind of play styles these dogs have. And I will probably do, you know what, I'm going to write it down right now. I will do an episode on play styles as well. Someone may have to remind me, send me a message when you're on my email list. Send me a message and say, Tracy, do that episode on play styles. Because there's many different types of play styles that dogs have. I have cutesy little names that I use for them, but we have wrestler type play styles. We've got rabbit and chaser type play styles. We have independent explorers, a whole bunch of different play styles that play into this. And it's important that we understand those different play styles and make sure that they're compatible. So, for example, a lot of independent explorers do not like dogs that have the rabbit chaser play style because they don't want to be chased. They don't want to play that game. And rabbit chaser play styles will get frustrated with the dog that doesn't return the favor. And the rabbit chaser play styles, they usually switch back and forth. One becomes the rabbit, one becomes the chaser, and then when they're done, they'll switch it up, right? That's a compatible play style. But put that in with an independent explorer, and they're going to be like, don't do that. Don't bother me. Don't chase me. Don't herd me. I don't do that. Don't do that. Right? So we actually want to observe that. We want to see what kind of play style this dog has, and is it compatible with my dog's play style? Because what you're going to find, as Karen mentioned in her email last week, I'd mentioned that, you know, her one dog, her older dog, doesn't really like to play or engage like that, and he keeps getting run into. He keeps getting slammed by the other dog, and he doesn't like that, right? So we want to make sure that we observe those kind of things. What are their play styles? Then we want to observe things and think about things like, what are the energy levels? Are the energy levels matched, or is that going to be problematic? Now, again, I just want you to observe it. I don't want you to start to judge it or to start to think to yourself, oh, this isn't going to work. Okay, it doesn't mean that it's not going to work. It means that this is something that you're going to have to figure out. You might have to set up some boundaries and some expectations, right? That's the kind of stuff that we need to think about. Okay, so that's the actual introduction. I want you to sort of take the time it takes so that you really get to know this dog and you're observing the interactions with a non-emotional critical eye. I want you to actually see, is my dog loving this? Or is the new dog liking this? Perhaps maybe it's the other way around. Maybe your dog is a bit too much for the new dog. I want you to use a critical eye when it comes to this, because the next few days, weeks, months, and as I said before, years that it takes for your dog to settle in is going to either make or break this combination, this relationship. And we want to make sure that we're seeing all the things that we're seeing. We're going in with clear expectations. We're going in with clear observations so that we can make an informed decision. All right. What are we at now? 27 minutes. So told you, I am a little bit of a dog nerd geek when it comes to this kind of stuff. I'm really, really, really methodical when it comes to how I introduce dogs. So that is just the introduction. Take some time. If you can, do this 2 or 3 times before you just sign on the dotted line that you're going to take this dog home. And even after you've signed on the dotted line, if you can arrange, and lots of rescues do this, which is great, if you can arrange a trial period, even better. Okay. Next week, I'm going to actually talk about what happens when your dog is there, when you get your dog home, all the things you're going to think about, like where are they going to sleep? How is the walk going to look like? Where are they going to be when I'm not at home? How am I going to set up these boundaries? What are my routines going to be? And what is the easiest way to get a dog to settle in? All of those things we're going to cover next week on the podcast. Finally, episode number 3 in this 3-part series. We're going to talk about settling in, how to allow your dog a seamless integration into your life and allow them to settle in and be the best version of themselves, create a happy and loving pack. That's all coming up next week. I hope you enjoyed this episode of how to introduce your dogs when you are thinking about getting a brand new dog. If you have any questions about this episode or anything on this topic, please feel free to reach out by, joining me on those Canine Chronicles. Sign up for my mailing list so that we never lose touch. We become pen pals forever. Make sure you're doing that. And as always, get out there today and be the person that your dog thinks you are, because your dog thinks you are amazing. And so do I. Have a great week, everybody, and we'll talk to you all next week. Bye for now.